The Grand Chamber floated above the planet Concordia, a massive structure of crystal and light that had witnessed 1,000 years of galactic peace. Inside, 47 species gathered in a circle, each representative sitting in chairs designed for their unique bodies. Some had wings, others had tentacles, and a few existed as clouds of gas held together by force fields. At the center of this circle stood a human woman named Dr. Sarah Chunda. Sarah wore the formal blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. Her hands trembled slightly as she held a datapad, but her voice remained steady. She had been speaking for 20 minutes, and the aliens watched her with expressions she could not read. Some had too many eyes. Others had none at all. The Scourge has destroyed 3 colony systems in just 2 months, Sarah said, her voice echoing through the chamber. 15 billion lives lost. The attacks are not random. They are moving toward the core worlds, toward all of us. If we do not act together now, more will die. She pressed a button on her pad, and holographic images appeared above the chamber floor. Dead worlds spun slowly in the air. Cities turned to ash. Oceans boiled away. The silence in the chamber was heavy. Humanity offers our fleet, Sarah continued. We have 300 warships ready to deploy. Our tactical teams have studied every engagement with the Scourge. We have ideas, strategies that might work. But we cannot do this alone. We need the Council's support. We need to share intelligence, coordinate our forces, and strike back before it is too late. She looked around the circle, meeting as many alien eyes as she could. Please, help us stop them. The Quarren representative rose from his seat. The Quarren were an old species, tall and thin with skin like polished silver. They had been exploring space for 10,000 years, long before humans had discovered fire. The Quarren's voice was like wind through metal pipes. The human makes passionate arguments, the Quarren said. But passion does not win wars. Knowledge does. Wisdom does. Your species has been in space for only 200 years. You still fight wars among yourselves. Your ships are crude, your weapons barbaric. You suggest aggression when what is needed is diplomacy. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Sarah felt her heart sink. Another representative stood, this one from the Deshan Collective. The Deshan looked like a floating jellyfish made of blue light. The human speaks of death, but she does not understand the Scourge. They are not conquerors. They are a force of nature, like a storm. One does not fight a storm. One moves out of its path. They are not a storm, Sarah said, her voice rising despite herself. They are ships. They have commanders, strategies. They can be fought. Enough. The word came from the council speaker, an ancient being called the Eldest. No one knew what species the Eldest belonged to. It sat in a tank of liquid nitrogen, its form barely visible through the frosted glass. We have heard the human proposal. Now we vote. The voting began. One by one, species declared their decision. The words were different in each language, but they all meant the same thing. No, no, no doubt the Quarren voted to offer the Scourge uninhabited star systems as tribute, hoping to redirect them. The Deshans voted to increase monitoring, but take no military action. The Vryn, who had the largest fleet in the galaxy, voted to defend only their own territory. They would not risk their ships for others. Sarah watched her hopes crumble. When the final vote came, the decision was clear. The Council would not fight. They would not share their military resources. They would not coordinate with Earth. The Quarren representative turned to Sarah one last time. The Council offers humanity this advice. Evacuate your worlds. Take your people beyond the galactic rim, beyond the Scourge's path. There is no shame in survival. Sarah's hands clenched around her datapad. And what about those who cannot evacuate? What about the 40 billion people on Earth alone? We cannot move them all in time. Then you must make difficult choices, the Deshan said softly. Choose who lives. This is what adults do. The chamber began to empty. Representatives floated, walked, or flew toward the exits, discussing trade agreements and cultural exchanges as if nothing important had happened. Sarah stood alone at the center, the holographic images of dead worlds still spinning above her. An aide approached, a young man from Earth named David. Ambassador, the ship is ready to take us home. Sarah did not move for a long moment. She stared at the empty seats, at the place where the galaxy's great powers had sat and done nothing. Finally, she nodded. Double quotes. Yes, let's go home. As they walked toward the exit, Sarah passed the Tyrell ambassador standing in a shadowed alcove. The Tyrell were a minor species, barely noticed by the great powers. Their ambassador was small, covered in gray fur with large dark eyes. The Tyrell homeworld had been one of the first casualties of the Scourge attack. The Tyrell ambassador said nothing, but Sarah saw something in those dark eyes. Shame, perhaps, or anger, or both. The walk to the docking bay felt like miles. Sarah's mind raced with what she would tell Earth. How did you explain that the galaxy had abandoned them? That 47 species with the power to help had simply walked away? On the ship back to Earth, Sarah sat in the command chair and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Scourge was coming. Ships made of living silicon, vast and terrible, consuming everything in their path. And Earth would face them alone. David brought her a cup of coffee. What will you tell them? He asked quietly. Sarah took the cup, letting the warmth spread through her hands. She thought about her daughter back on Earth, about all the children who deserved to grow up safe. She thought about humanity's short, violent history, and how every time they were pushed to the edge, they found a way to push back. I will tell them the truth, Sarah said. The council turned their backs. Now it is up to us. She took a sip of coffee and continued staring at the stars. Somewhere behind those stars, the Scourge was coming. And somewhere ahead, Earth was waiting. Humanity would have to find its own answer. The broadcast went out to every human colony, every station, every ship. Dr. Sarah Chen stood before the cameras in the United Earth Government Assembly Hall, her face tired but composed. Behind her, the flags of 100 nations hung still in the recycled air. The Galactic Council has refused our request for assistance, Sarah said simply. They have advised us to evacuate Earth and flee beyond the galactic rim. They will not fight the Scourge. For a moment, the galaxy held its breath. Then the panic began. On Mars, people rushed to the spaceports. On Europa Station, families fought for seats on ships that were already full. The outer colonies, those closest to the Scourge's projected path, began emergency evacuations. But there were not enough ships. There would never be enough ships. Earth held 40 billion people. The entire human fleet could evacuate perhaps 500 million if they stripped the warships down and packed people in like cargo. The math was simple and terrible. Most people would not escape. In the streets of New York, London, and Shanghai, people gathered to watch the news. Some cried. Others prayed. Many simply stood silent, holding their children close. Humanity had always known it was alone in the universe. Now they knew just how alone. The Earth Parliament met in emergency session. 300 representatives from every region, every culture, every faith sat in the great chamber beneath Geneva. The debate lasted for 16 hours. Some argued for evacuation. Save who we can, they said. The species must survive, even if most of us do not. Others argued for surrender. Perhaps we can negotiate. Perhaps the Scourge will spare us if we offer tribute. But most simply asked, what can we do? How can 300 ships fight an enemy that destroyed 1,000? Admiral Marcus Webb had waited for this moment. He stood from his seat in the military section, his uniform crisp, despite the long night. Webb was 60 years old, gray-haired and scarred from a dozen conflicts back when Earth's nations still fought each other. He walked to the center of the chamber and looked around at the exhausted faces. "I know you are afraid," Webb said. His voice was rough, like gravel. "I am afraid too. The enemy is stronger than us. They have destroyed everything they have encountered. The odds say we cannot win." He paused, letting the silence settle. "But let me tell you about odds. Every species in this galaxy evolved on worlds that were kind to them. Gentle gravity, stable climates, abundant food. They reached the stars because their planets let them dream. Do you know what Earth gave us?" Webb pressed a button and images appeared on the screens. Ice ages, deserts, predators with teeth like knives, volcanoes, hurricanes, plagues. "Earth tried to kill us," Webb said. "For 200,000 years, our planet tried to kill us. And we survived. We did not survive by running. We survived by fighting back, by making tools and weapons, by learning to work together when the winter came. We survived because when something tried to destroy us, we destroyed it first." Some representatives nodded. Others looked uncertain. Webb continued. "The Scourge will reach New Britannia colony in 4 months. Earth in 8. If we run, we abandon 40 billion people. If we fight, we probably die. Those are our choices." He looked at each representative in turn. "But here is what I know about humans. We do not let our people die without a fight. Not 40 billion of them. Not even one. The Quarren called us primitive and barbaric. They were right. We are barbaric. We evolved to fight, to survive, to never surrender. Every species in the galaxy learned civilization before they learned war. We learned war first." Webb slammed his fist on the podium. "So I say we use that. We weaponize everything we have. Every desperate idea, every crazy plan that the Council species would call too risky. We fight the Scourge with everything we are, everything we have, and if we die making them bleed." The chamber erupted. Half the representatives stood and cheered. The other half sat in stunned silence. The vote came 2 hours later. Earth would fight. The mobilization began immediately. Every shipyard in the solar system went to full production, running 24 hours a day. Civilian factories were converted to make weapons. Scientists worked around the clock on new technologies, desperate ideas that might give humanity an edge. The call went out across human space. Anyone with military training, come home. Retired soldiers put on their uniforms again. Engineers and doctors volunteered. Students fresh from the academy were given ships to command. It was not enough, but it was everything humanity had. Admiral Webb stood in the command center of the Third Fleet, watching his ships assemble. 300 warships, Earth's entire navy, against an enemy that had destroyed thousands. The numbers did not favor humanity. His second-in-command, Captain Rodriguez, stood beside him. "Do you really think we can win?" she asked quietly. Webb was silent for a moment. Through the viewport, he could see Earth, blue and beautiful and fragile. "I think we are the only thing standing between that planet and extinction," Webb said. "Win or lose, we stand." Rodriguez nodded. "Where do we make our stand?" "New Britannia. It is the furthest colony. If we can stop them there, we buy time. If we cannot..." He did not finish the sentence. The fleet prepared to jump. Families said goodbye to their loved ones, not knowing if they would see them again. Children watched their parents leave for a war they might not return from. But something else was happening too. In the factories, workers pushed themselves harder. In the laboratories, breakthroughs came faster than anyone thought possible. In the training centers, recruits learned in weeks what should take months. Humanity had been backed into a corner, and something old and fierce woke up inside them. Something from the days when humans huddled in caves while predators prowled outside. Something that said, "We do not go quietly into the dark." Sarah Chun watched the fleet depart from Earth orbit. She stood at the window of the government complex, her reflection ghostly in the glass. David stood beside her. "Do you think we made the right choice?" David asked. Sarah thought about the council, about the Quarren's smug certainty that humans should just run away. She thought about her daughter, about 40 billion people who deserve to live. "I think," Sarah said slowly, "that we made the only choice we could live with." The council turned their backs. "We cannot do the same to our own people." The fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving Earth behind. On the ground, factories worked. Scientists invented. Families prepared. Humanity stood ready to fight an impossible war. They would not win by being smarter or stronger, but perhaps they could win by being more stubborn, more desperate, and more willing to walk into the fire. The countdown had begun. 4 months until the Scourge reached New Britannia. 4 months to prepare for hell. New Britannia had been a beautiful colony once. Green hills under a yellow sun, clear oceans, cities built along winding rivers. Now it was empty. The evacuation ships had taken everyone away weeks ago. Only the 3rd and 7th fleets remained, waiting in the shadow of the planet's largest moon. Admiral Webb stood on the bridge of the flagship Defiant, watching the scanner displays. 300 human warships hung in space, their weapons charged and ready. It was the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. Against any human enemy, it would have been unstoppable. Against the Scourge, it might last an hour. "Contact in 30 minutes, Captain Rodriguez reported. "Long-range sensors are picking them up now." Webb nodded. He had spent the last 4 months studying every recorded encounter with the Scourge. Every battle the Council species had lost. Every transmission from dying ships. He had watched the footage until he could close his eyes and see the enemy perfectly. The Scourge were not like anything humanity had fought before. They were silicon-based life forms, creatures of living crystal and stone. Their ships grew from asteroids, massive structures that looked like Gothic cathedrals carved from black glass. They did not use missiles or bullets. They used particle beams that could cut through hull plating like tissue paper. Every species that had fought them had used the same tactic: stand off at long range and fire everything. It never worked. The Scourge ships were too tough, too well armored. You could pound them with fusion warheads for hours and barely scratch them. But Webb had noticed something. Something small that every other species had overlooked. "Engineering, are the charges ready?" Webb asked. "All 3,000 charges are in position," the chief engineer reported. "Thermal oscillators online. Waiting for your command." Webb allowed himself a small smile. The Council species fought like they lived, careful and precise. They tried to win through superior technology. Humanity did not have superior technology, so they would win by being crazy instead. "All ships, this is Admiral Webb. You know the plan. Draw them into the belt. Make them chase you. Do not engage directly until I give the signal." The response came from 300 captains. Understood. The Scourge fleet emerged from hyperspace like a nightmare made real. 60 ships, each one the size of a small moon. Black crystal surfaces reflected no light. They moved in perfect formation, inexorable as death itself. Webb watched them on the display. 60 ships. The Scourge had destroyed the Quarren's 1,000-ship armada with 80. Humanity had brought 300 to fight 60. The Council would say humanity had a numerical advantage. Webb knew better. 60 Scourge ships could easily destroy 300 human vessels, unless the humans were very clever and very lucky. "All ships, begin the attack run. Make it look good." The 3rd Fleet surged forward, weapons blazing. Railguns hurled tungsten rods at a fraction of light speed. Missiles streaked across the void, their fusion warheads bright as small suns. Energy weapons carved lines of fire through space. The barrage struck the Scourge fleet like rain against mountains. The black crystal hulls absorbed the impacts, barely scorched. A few surface cracks appeared, nothing more. Then the Scourge returned fire. Particle beams, coherent streams of accelerated matter, lanced out from the enemy ships. The first beam caught the destroyer Achilles, cutting it in half. The second vaporized the cruiser Thermopylae. The third killed the Valiant and everyone aboard her. Break formation. Fall back toward the asteroid belt. Webb ordered. The human ships scattered and ran. It looked like panic, like a rout. The Scourge did what they always did, what every predator does when prey runs. They chased. The human fleet plunged into the asteroid belt that circled New Britannia's sun. It was a dense field, rocks the size of cities tumbling through space. The human ships wove between the asteroids, using them for cover. The Scourge followed, their massive ships crushing smaller rocks as they came. They are fully committed, Rodriguez reported. All 60 ships are in the belt. Good, Webb said. Engineering, activate Sequence 1. Throughout the asteroid belt, hidden charges detonated. But these were not explosive charges. They were thermal oscillators, human devices that could superheat matter to thousands of degrees in seconds. Then flash freeze it just as quickly. The asteroids around the Scourge fleet began to glow cherry red, then white hot. Molten rock sprayed into space. The heat washed over the enemy ships, and their crystal hulls began to expand from the thermal stress. Then Sequence 2 activated. Flash freeze. The temperature dropped 1,000 degrees in 3 seconds. The molten asteroids became ice. The Scourge hulls expanded from heat, suddenly contracted from cold. Crystal is strong, but it is also brittle. Thermal shock is its greatest weakness. The first Scourge ship cracked down the middle with a sound like a mountain breaking. The crack spread, branched, shattered the ship into 1,000 pieces. Then the second ship broke. Then the third. It was like watching a glacier calve. Massive chunks of crystal hull spinning away into space. Internal systems exposed to vacuum. The Scourge, for the first time in recorded history, dying in large numbers, but they were not dying fast enough. The remaining Scourge ships began to adapt. They moved away from the charged asteroids. They focused their fire on human ships instead of chasing them. And their particle beams were merciless. The Seventh Fleet took the worst of it. Ship after ship died, their hulls cut open, their crews lost to vacuum. Captain Kim's voice came over the command channel, calm even as her ship burned around her. This is the Sovereign. We have taken critical damage. Reactor is failing. It has been an honor. The Sovereign exploded in a ball of plasma. Webb watched the tactical display. 30 Scourge ships destroyed, 30 remaining. But humanity had lost over half its fleet. The math was turning against them. All ships, thermal charges, Sequence 3. Full power. Every remaining charge in the belt detonated at once. The cycle of heat and cold repeated, faster this time, more intense. Another 15 Scourge ships shattered, their hulls unable to withstand the stress. 15 Scourge ships remained, and they were retreating. Webb stared at the display in disbelief. They are withdrawing? Confirmed, Rodriguez said. All remaining enemy ships are jumping to hyperspace. The Scourge left. For the first time in their known history, they had retreated from a battle, but the cost had been terrible. Of 300 human ships, only 23 remained combat capable. Tens of thousands of people were dead. The space around New Britannia was filled with debris from both fleets, a graveyard of broken ships and broken dreams. Webb sat down slowly in his command chair. They had won. Somehow, impossibly, they had won. "Get me a channel to Earth," he said quietly. The connection took a moment to establish. Then Sarah Chen's face appeared on the screen. Hope and fear mixed in her expression. "Admiral?" she asked. "The Scourge are retreating," Webb said. "We stopped them, but we lost most of the fleet." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, there were tears there. "You saved us time." "How long do we have?" "Unknown. They will adapt to the thermal tactic. It will not work a second time. We need something else. Something bigger. We will find it," Sarah promised Dodd after the transmission ended. Webb stood and looked out at the wreckage. 23 ships from 300. But they had proven something important. The Scourge could be hurt. They could be killed. They could be made to retreat. News of the battle spread across the galaxy within hours. Some council species watched in shock. Others dismissed it as luck. But a very few, began to wonder. Perhaps the humans were not as primitive as they seemed. Perhaps courage mattered more than technology. Perhaps the galaxy had been wrong about the species from the death world called Earth. The victory at New Britannia bought humanity 3 months. 3 months of frantic work, desperate innovation, and growing dread. Because everyone knew the Scourge would return. And next time, the thermal shock tactic would not work. Admiral Webb returned to Earth as a hero, but he felt like a fraud. They had not won at New Britannia. They had merely survived. And the cost had been staggering. 70,000 people dead. 277 ships destroyed. For what? A few months of borrowed time? He stood before the United Earth Government's Military Council in a sealed room deep beneath Geneva. The faces around the table were tired. They had not slept well in months. None of them had. "The Scourge are gathering," Webb reported. "Our deep space probes show them massing beyond the rim. 2,000 ships. They are bringing everything they have." The silence in the room was heavy. 2,000, someone whispered. "We have barely 200 ships left." Dr. Sarah Chun spoke up from her seat. "Then we cannot fight them ship to ship. We need another approach." "I am open to suggestions," Webb said bitterly. A new voice entered the conversation. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the head of Earth's Astrophysics Division. She was young, barely 30, with dark circles under her eyes from too many sleepless nights. She pressed a button and a hologram appeared above the table. "This is Prometheus 9, Tanaka said. "A red giant star in an unstable state. It is near collapse. With the right sequence of gravitational distortions, we can make it collapse early." Webb studied the image. "Make it go supernova?" "Yes, a controlled stellar detonation. The blast wave would destroy everything within 3 light hours. If we can lure the Scourge fleet there, we end them," Webb finished. He leaned back in his chair. "What do we need?" Tanaka highlighted points around the star. "We need to position gravity generators at these 6 points. They need to run for 47 minutes to create the resonance cascade. And we need the Scourge to be within the blast radius when it happens. How do we get them there? We bait them. Make them chase us into the system. Make them angry enough that they commit their entire fleet." Webb saw the flaw immediately. Someone has to stay. To operate the generators, to keep the Scourge engaged. To make sure they do not leave before the star goes. Tanaka nodded slowly. "Yes, it is a one-way mission. The ships that go to Prometheus 9 will not come back." The room fell silent again. They were discussing murder, asking people to sacrifice themselves, to fly into a star system knowing they would die there. It was monstrous. It was necessary. "I will lead the mission," Webb said. "Admiral, you do not have to," Sarah began. "Yes, I do." Webb's voice was firm. "I asked 300 ships to follow me to New Britannia. I watched most of them die. If I'm asking people to sacrifice themselves, I go first. The vote was taken. The mission was approved. They had 6 weeks to prepare. Webb took the first fleet, what remained of it. 142 ships. He asked for volunteers, and every single person in the fleet raised their hand. They knew it was suicide. They came anyway. The news spread across Earth. People gathered in the streets, watching the ships prepared to depart. Some cried. Others saluted. Parents held their children tight and explained that sometimes good people had to do hard things. Then something unexpected happened. A transmission came from the Tyrell Dominion. The Tyrell, that minor species whose ambassador had watched Sarah's humiliation at the council with shame in his eyes. Their message was brief. We have 47 ships. They are yours if you will have them. We cannot let humanity fight alone. The Tyrell fleet jumped into Earth orbit 3 days later. Small ships, older models, but armed and ready. Their admiral, a gray-furred creature named Karish, met with Webb in person. Why? Webb asked simply. Karash's dark eyes were steady. Because you shamed us. The council turned their backs, and we said nothing. But we lost our homeworld to the Scourge. We remember what it is to watch your planet burn. We will not watch Earth burn without fighting. Webb gripped Karash's paw. Welcome to the suicide mission. We are already dead, Karash said. We died when we let the council abandon us. This is how we come back to life. The combined human Tyrell fleet jumped to Prometheus 9. The red giant hung in space like a bloated eye, its surface churning with magnetic storms. The fleet split into groups, each positioning gravity generators according to Tanaka's calculations. Then they began to broadcast. Taunts. Challenges. They called the Scourge cowards. Failures, weak. They broadcast the footage from New Britannia over and over, showing Scourge ships shattering. They dared the enemy to come. The Scourge came. 2,000 ships emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of black locusts. They fell on the human Tyrell fleet with fury. This was not the careful, methodical attack from New Britannia. This was rage. The battle was hell. Particle beams crisscrossed space. Ships exploded on both sides. The human Tyrell fleet did not try to win. They tried to survive long enough. 47 minutes. That was all they needed. Webb watched the countdown on his command screen. 30 minutes remaining. The Defiant shook as a beam grazed her hull. Half his fleet was already gone. A Tyrell ship, the Remembrance, took a direct hit. As it died, its captain rammed his burning vessel into a Scourge ship. Both exploded. 20 minutes remaining. The gravity generators were holding, but barely. The star was beginning to pulse, its surface writhing. Captain Rodriguez ran the tactical board, her voice steady even as alarms blared. Engineering reports critical damage on decks 5 through 12. We have fires in 3 sections. Generator 4 is failing. Reroute power from weapons, Webb ordered. We do not need to shoot anymore. We just need to survive. 15 minutes remaining. A transmission came from Karash's ship. The image was grainy, filled with static. The Tyrell admiral was bleeding from a dozen wounds. Admiral Webb, it has been an honor. We will hold the line. As will we, Webb replied. 10 minutes remaining. The Scourge seemed to realize something was wrong. Some of their ships began to pull back, to move away from the star. Webb could not let that happen. All ships, full burn toward the enemy. Make them chase us closer to the star. The human Tyrell fleet charged. It was madness. It was perfect. The Scourge could not resist. They pursued, firing constantly. More ships died. The destroyer Sparta, the cruiser Athens, the Tyrell ship Hopes and 5 minutes remaining. Webb looked around his bridge. Rodriguez at tactical. Lieutenant Chun at communications, Ensign Park at the helm. They were also young. They deserved to grow old, to have families, to see Earth again. "I am sorry," Webb said quietly. Rodriguez smiled, though her eyes were wet. "Do not be. We chose this. Every one of us chose this." 2 minutes remaining. The star was pulsing rapidly now. The gravity generators were screaming. The Scourge finally understood the trap, but it was too late. Their fleet was too deep into the system, too close to the star's gravity well. 1 minute remaining. Webb broadcast one final message, not just to his fleet, but to Earth, to humanity, to the galaxy that had abandoned them. "This is Admiral Marcus Webb of the First Fleet. We walked into the fire so you would not have to. Tell them we chose this. Tell them we were not afraid. Earth, if you can hear me, live well, live free, and remember us." 30 seconds. The gravity generators reached critical mass. The star's core collapsed. For a brief moment, Prometheus 9 became the brightest object in the galaxy. A supernova's light, a star's dying scream. The blast wave expanded at near light speed, consuming everything. The Scourge fleet. 2,000 ships. Gone. The human Tyrol fleet. 189 ships. Gone. 40-7,000 humans. 62,000 Tyrol. Gone. Admiral Marcus Webb. Gone. But Earth lived. The galaxy watched the supernova's light and understood, finally, what humanity was capable of. Not the technology to trigger a star. The Council species could have done that. But the will to walk into the fire. The courage to sacrifice everything. That was something only humans had shown in the government complex on Earth. Sarah Chun watched the light from Prometheus 9 reach their telescopes. She watched the star die and knew that Webb had succeeded. The Scourge were broken. She stood and saluted the light, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for walking into the fire." 3 months after Prometheus 9, the galaxy was a different place. The Scourge were gone. Not extinct, but broken. Their main fleet destroyed, their momentum shattered. The few surviving ships fled back into the void between galaxies, leaderless and scattered. The galaxy was safe, at least for now, but the cost had been terrible. Earth mourned 47,000 dead from the First Fleet. The Tyrol Dominion mourned 62,000. Every human colony held memorials. Every city on Earth had a wall with names carved in stone. Children left flowers at these walls. Parents traced their fingers over names they would never forget. Dr. Sarah Chun stood at one such wall in Geneva, the central memorial for Earth's government complex. She found the name she was looking for, Admiral Marcus Webb. She placed her hand on the carved letters and closed her eyes. "We won," she whispered. "You did it." But winning fell hollow. So many dead. So many families destroyed. And for what? Because the Galactic Council had been too proud, too cowardly to fight alongside them. Sarah's anger had been growing for 3 months. It was not the hot anger of the moment. It was cold, hard, and focused. The kind of anger that changes things. She walked into the assembly hall where the United Earth government was meeting. The representatives fell silent as she entered. Sarah had been appointed the new Secretary of Galactic Affairs. She spoke for Earth now, and Earth's voice had grown very loud. "The Galactic Council has requested a meeting," Sarah announced. "They want to congratulate us on our victory." Bitter laughter rippled through the hall. "They want to congratulate us," Sarah continued, her voice sharp. "After they refused to help. After they told us to run away. Now that the Scourge are defeated, now they want to talk. What do we do?" Someone asked. Sarah smiled, but it was not a kind smile. "We go to the council, but not to receive congratulations. We go to change everything." 2 weeks later, Sarah stood once again in the Galactic Council chamber. But this time was different. Behind her floated 500 human warships, new vessels built in the shipyards that had worked without rest for months. The council could see them through the chamber's transparent walls. A reminder that humanity was no longer weak. The Quorum representative spoke first, his metallic voice carefully neutral. Ambassador Chun, the council wishes to express its relief that the scourge threat has been eliminated. Humanity has proven itself capable. Stop, Sarah interrupted. Silence. No one interrupted a council session. I did not come here for your congratulations, Sarah said. Her voice echoed through the chamber. I came here to tell you that humanity is done asking for permission. We are forming the Outer Defense Coalition, an alliance of species who actually fight to defend the galaxy, not species who hide and hope that danger passes. Murmurs of shock rippled through the council. The Deshan representative's blue light pulsed with what might have been anger. You cannot simply create a military alliance outside the council's authority. Watch us, Sarah said flatly. She pressed a button on her datapad. Images appeared in the air. Ships. Fleets. Not just human vessels. The Tyrell had already pledged their remaining forces to the coalition. So had 3 other species minor powers that the council had ignored for centuries. The coalition has 400 warships already, Sarah continued. And we are accepting new members. Any species willing to defend the galaxy, not just their own territory. Any species with the courage to stand and fight. The Quarren rose from his seat. This is unacceptable. You are fragmenting the galactic order. You are doing what you should have done, Sarah snapped. The Scourge nearly destroyed us all. Not because they were unstoppable, but because you were cowards. You had the ships, the technology, the resources. But you did not have the will. She looked around the chamber, meeting eyes with as many representatives as she could. Humanity lost 47,000 people at Prometheus 9. The Tyrell lost 62,000. We bled for this galaxy. We died for species that would not even share intelligence with us. And now you want to congratulate us? No, you want to control us. You want us to go back to being the junior species that follows your rules. Sarah's voice grew harder. That is over. The coalition is open to any species who want to join. We will share our technology, our tactics, our resources. But we will not bow to a council that turned its back when we needed help. The chamber erupted. Some species shouted in anger. Others called for order. But Sarah noticed something else. Some representatives sat quietly, watching with thoughtful expressions. The session adjourned in chaos. But as Sarah left the chamber, she was approached by several ambassadors. The Vryn, the Celtic, the Praxis Collective. 5 more species, not the great powers, but solid middle-tier civilizations with real military strength. We wish to discuss membership in the coalition, the Vryn ambassador said quietly. Over the next month, the Galactic Council fractured. 23 species left the council to join the coalition. Another 15 began talks. The old order, which had stood for 1,000 years, was crumbling. The great powers, the Quarren and the Deshans and the others who had ruled for so long, were forced to choose. Maintain their pride and watch their influence fade, or adapt to a new reality. Some chose pride. The Quarren withdrew to their core systems, bitter and isolated. But others, slowly and reluctantly, began to change. The Deshan Collective requested observer status at coalition meetings. The Vryn opened their military academies to human instructors. Sarah stood in the new coalition headquarters on New Britannia, rebuilt from the ashes of the battle that had saved it. The building was simple, functional, built in the human style. No crystal spires or floating platforms. Just solid walls and practical design. A memorial wall stood in the central plaza. Every name from Prometheus 9 was carved there. Human and Tyrell together. 47,000 humans and 62,000. Tyrell who had died to save a galaxy that had abandoned them. People came from across Coalition space to visit the wall. They left flowers, small stones, handwritten notes. The memorial had become a pilgrimage site. Sarah watched a group of young cadets approaching the wall. They wore the new Coalition uniform, a blend of human and Tyrell design. But what caught her attention was that only half of them were human. The others were Vryn, Keltec, Praxis. Species who had once ignored Earth were now sending their children to learn from humanity. One cadet stepped forward from the group. She was Quarren, tall and silver-skinned. Sarah recognized the irony immediately. The Quarren who had called humanity too primitive were now sending their youth to learn from humans. The Quarren cadet stood before the wall and raised her hand in a crisp salute. She held it for a long moment, then spoke in accented but clear English. "Thank you for walking into the fire." Sarah felt tears in her eyes. She approached the cadets and returned the salute. "They would be proud to see you here," Sarah said. The Quarren cadet looked at her. "My grandfather was the one who spoke against you in the council, who said humans were too primitive. He was wrong. I am here to be better than he was. What is your name?" Sarah asked. "Cadet Vexton, ma'am. First of my family to serve in something other than the old council fleet." Sarah placed a hand on the young Quarren's shoulder. "Welcome to the Coalition, cadet. We need people who want to be better." As the cadets moved on, Sarah remained at the memorial. She traced her fingers over Webb's name, then over a Tyrell name beside it. Korish, the admiral who had brought his people to fight alongside humanity. The galaxy was changing. The old council still existed, but it was hollow now. Real power had shifted to the Coalition, to the species who had learned the lesson that humanity taught at such terrible cost. Courage mattered. Will mattered. When the darkness came, you could run or you could fight. The council had chosen to run. Humanity had chosen to fight, and the galaxy would never forget. David approached, carrying a datapad. "Ambassador, we have 5 more species requesting membership. And the Veshans have sent a formal apology. They want to discuss integration with the Coalition." Sarah nodded. "Schedule the meetings, but make sure they understand the terms. We do not join the old order. The old order joins us, or it fades away." "What about the council?" David asked. "The Quarren are trying to hold the remaining species together." Sarah looked out over New Britannia. The city was growing, new buildings rising every day, human and alien architecture blending together. The Coalition was not just a military alliance. It was becoming something new. "Let them try," Sarah said. "History is not on their side. They had 1,000 years to build a galaxy that worked. They built a galaxy that hid from its problems. We will build something better." She turned back to the memorial wall, to the names of the dead who had made this future possible. "We walked into the fire," she said quietly, "and we came out stronger. Across the galaxy, the old powers watched and worried. On Earth, factories built new ships. In academies across Coalition space, cadets from 100 species trained together, learning human tactics and human stubbornness. The council had turned their backs. So humanity had lit a fire that would burn for generations. A fire that said, never again would the galaxy turn away from its own defense. Never again would courage be dismissed as primitive. The age of the old council was ending. The age of the Coalition, forged in sacrifice and tempered in fire, had begun.